We're going to start Nun Daled Amud Beis. It's about 5. It's 11 lines from the bottom. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. It's chus of our learning. We should have the Beis Hamikdash. Should be a panacea. Okay, the Gemara starts over here. We were in the middle of discussing differences between if it's a paternal aunt, rather, if it's a paternal uncle that's married to a woman, or if it's a maternal. No, it's a father's paternal brother, or a father's maternal brother that's married to a woman. That's called deidase. The Gemara says, "V'deidase de pshit le'letana, de mina'av le'mina'ei minale." How do we know that what's the biblical prohibition of deidase, which is the aunt? Good morning. The aunt that is the uncle's wife. How is the Gemara so clear? The Tana, how is the Tana so clear that it's only if it's the uncle because it's the father's paternal brother? Gemara says, we learn from another source that says daidai, which means the uncle. So over here it says that he revealed the nakedness of his uncle. That's if he marries his wife. Ksiv hasa, if he lives with his wife. Ksiv hasa, and over there it says in the other place, that the uncle or the cousin redeems him. This is talking about an Eved Ivri that ends up getting sold to a non-Jewish master. So there's an obligation on the relatives to redeem him. He doesn't get assimilated. If they don't redeem, then someone else, then the community redeems him. But first, the obligation is on the relatives. And who are the relatives? So it says his uncle or his cousin. So malahalan min avlei menaim, afkan min avlei menaim. Just like over there, it's only which uncle? It's his father's paternal brother, not his father's maternal brother. So too over here, when it says daidai, it's only the father's paternal brother, not the father's maternal brother. Well, you introduced the problem again. You don't always answer it when you say the same thing again. It says v'hasaminala. That was our original question. How do you know? It says Amar Krami Mishpachta Yigaleno, from his family he's redeemed, and it uses the term family. That means mishpachas avkri, mishpachas eminakri. Mishpacha, we have a rule that the father's family is considered mishpacha when it comes to inheritance, and the mother's family is not considered mishpacha. Okay, now we get introduced to a very interesting case, very complex family. V'hadetanan, and this that it was taught. Amrullah meisa ishtecha. He told the person his wife died. Apparently he was on a trip, and he's told it's easier if he's on the trip, not his wife is on the trip, as you'll see, because it's going to get complex over here. So they told him that his wife died. Okay, so he married her sister, but it was only her sister. He married her half sister from the father. Rashi gives me all the names. You ready? So Reuven is married to Milcah, who is the daughter of Besuel and Chana. Okay, arbitrarily chosen.
Or just generally?
No, he was married. Anyway, they tell him that Milcah passed away. So it turns out the Milcah's father was Besuel. So Besuel had another wife, Keturah. And from that other wife, they had a daughter, Rivka. So he decides he's going to marry Milcah's half-sister, Rivka. Okay, so we're not done yet. Mesa, But then they tell him that Rivka died. So Vanasa Chesem Ima. Now, Rivka had a half sister from her mother, which was Keturah. Her name was Sarah. Now, how was that? Because Keturah was married to Chetzrain and was also married to Besuel at a later time, of course. So he then marries her Rivka's half sister from the mother, which is Keturah's first husband.
No.
So then they tell Reuven that Sarah passed away.
I was going to say, we didn't get a white paper.
V'nasa Chesa me'avia, and he marries Sarah's half sister from the father, because remember Chetzrain, who was married to Keturah, was originally married to Leah. So, and they had a daughter Yechevet. So Reuven's wife Milcah had passed away. Rivka had passed away. His other wife Sarah had passed away. Now he's marrying Sarah's half sister, which is Yechevet. I'm working it backwards, by the way. So, and it's becoming expensive. So Manasseh Chesa Me'avia marries her half sister. Mesa, she dies. Yechevet dies. Manasseh Chesa Me'ima. I skipped over here. Mesa Manasseh Chesa Me'ima. Manasseh Chesa Me'avia. Mesa Manasseh Chesa Me'ima. And then she dies. Yechevet dies. So he marries Yechevet's half sister from the mother, which was Leah, because Leah was originally married to Yaakov, and they have Dinah. And then
These are all related by like aunts and uncles of the parents that were just connected maternally, or
I made a chart over here,
yeah.
but I don't know if it's going to help you. This is the husband, and these are his wives, and these are their parents. So there's always one in the middle that's linking. The question is if it's a father or a mother that's linking them, but they're all half.
Oh.
Yeah. So the way it works is that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of his wives. 1 and 2 are related through the father. And 2 and 3 are related through the mother. 3 and 4 are related through the father, and 4 and 5 are related through the mother. So it turns out is that, take a look at this halacha, it gets clearer. Turns out it was all not true. All of them were. It doesn't say the guy fainted after all that. Turns out they were all alive. Now, which ones of them were actual marriages?
Including the first wife who's still alive.
Including the first wife. You get the issue? The problem is that a wedding that's done on the wife's sister is not even considered a wedding. There's no wedding there. There's no marriage. So he doesn't need a divorce. So he didn't, but the other ones would be actual weddings if it's not the sister. So his wife had a sister. Now that sister also had a sister, but that sister was not his wife's sister because this was the father's, this was a paternal sister, and then there was a maternal sister of that, which was totally not related. So it's only 1, 3, and 5 which are not related. So the Gemara says, he's permitted to marry those. If he would pass away, and the brother had to do Yibam, Reuven's brother Shimon had to do Yibam, so all of those would be, those 3, 1, 3, and 5 would be considered his wife, and one of them, Yibam or Chalitza on one of them would permit the other 2. But he's not allowed to marry number 2 and number 4. He's not allowed to marry number 2 and number 4. Why? Because those are directly sisters of his wife. Now, what type of sister is it? Well, number 2 is paternal, and number 4 is both paternal and maternal. Depends from number 5 or number 3. So, Number 2 and number 4 would not affect the Yibum because he wasn't married to them. But let's say his first wife actually passed away, and then he lives with the second wife. Then the whole story moves over one step. Then he's mutter b'shni or b'revius. Then he's permissible to the second one and to the fourth one, because those are the ones that aren't related. But Paichester is saying it'd be forbidden to the third and the fifth. Whatever the case is, Alma, what we're seeing here is achais ishtei bein menav bein menaim asuris minalan. Where do we know that from? You see, I know that a person is forbidden to live with his sister. That's whether it's his maternal or paternal or maternal, it doesn't matter. I also know that there's a distinction between living with his aunt, that's the wife of his uncle, that there is a distinction between if it's his uncle because it's his father's maternal brother or paternal brother. Maternal would be permissible biblically. What about his wife's sister?
That's the wife of his uncle.
Yeah, the wife of his uncle. That would make a difference how he's his uncle.
But that's on his mother's side.
No, on his father's side.
Father's side, it's okay, but
no, his father's side, it's not okay. But even on the
father's
father's side, there's a distinction between if it's the father's paternal brother or maternal brother. Because it's the father's half brother. Yeah, that's that little nuance there. That's where.
Yeah.
So what about the wife's half sister? So where do we know? Where we're seeing from this brisa is that the wife's half sister is prohibited, whether it's a maternal sister or a paternal sister. Where do we know that from? So the Gemara says, well, Yalef Me'achose. We'll learn it from his own sister. His own sister, we didn't make that distinction, right? It's whether it's maternal or paternal. Ma'achose bein menav bein menaim. Afkan bein menav bein menaim. It was an easy one. Gemara says, not so simple. Leilef midei dasei. Why don't you learn it from his aunt? The question is his wife more similar to his sister? Or is his wife is his wife's sister more similar to his own sister or more similar to his uncle's wife? He says, well, just like by the uncle, by the aunt, the uncle needs to be from the father, paternal, the father's paternal brother, not the father's maternal brother. Umar says, well, it's more logical to do this comparison to his own sister rather than to his father's brother's wife. Because on this level, his sister and his wife, when you make a family tree, they're on the same level. His sister and his wife, one is a dotted line, one is I don't know how you do it, a double line maybe. Otherwise, we're going up a level and we're doing his father's relatives. Umar says, Adirabba, no, that's not a good comparison. It's the opposite. His own sister is not a relative through marriage. Why don't you say it's the parents' marriage? Because it doesn't matter if the parents are married. It could be his sister just because of a woman that was not married to, raped or whatever. It's still a sister. So there's no marriage there that creates that forbidden union. But the prohibition on his aunt is only a prohibition through marriage. And the prohibition on his wife's sister is a prohibition through marriage. So when dealing with marriage, we have to take a look at if it's maternal or paternal.
So not all marriages that are prohibited is like nullified in a way. So there are some marriages where it's just not even a marriage. You know?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Oh.
But here we're dealing with that if for whatever reason, we're not dealing with that she's a married woman, because then there's another prohibition of the Eishes Ish. We're dealing with that this was his aunt. Well, and so why is she now on the shidduch scene and he's dating her or whatever? Because the husband passed away, his uncle passed away or divorced her. So is he prohibited to her? So biblically, he would only be prohibited to her if it's the father's brothers, a brother from the father's side, right? They share the same father. They share the same grandfather, and then it was his wife.
Yeah.
So now we're asking, but if it's his own wife, her sister, is any sister, any of her half sisters prohibited, or is it just paternal half sisters? So we said, well, we'll learn from his own sister. We said, but maybe we should learn from his uncle or his aunt. The Gemara says, "Elami Eishasach." This is really the same level because this is another sister-in-law. We'll compare it to his other sister-in-law. There's two types of sister-in-laws. Could be his wife's sister, or it could be his brother's wife. It's also a sister-in-law. Now, what happens when it's his brother's wife? What type of brother the wife is prohibited? Is it his half brother paternal, or is it only the half brother paternal brother, or is it also the maternal brother's wife that's also prohibited? Okay, we'll learn from Eshazach. It turns out that it's both. Shekain davar al yidei kedushin v'krevi atzma. But there you have everything. It's through marriage. Why is he prohibited to his sister-in-law through marriage? And it's his own relative. It's not on the level up of his father's generation. The Gemara says, well, you're doing good, but where do you know that from? Where do you know that the sister-in-law, the brother's wife, is both paternal and maternal brothers? The Tanya, started in a brisa. What we're going to do now is we're going to quote a pasuk that has two parts to the pasuk that seems to be repetitive. And because it's repetitive, it's going to tell us both if it's a maternal brother and both if it's a paternal brother, that both of them are prohibited. And then we'll be able to take it back to his wife's sister, that it doesn't matter how it is. The Tanya was started in a brisa, Ervas Eishes Achicha Leisagali. The nakedness of his brother's wife, he should not uncover. Bein Minav, Bein Minaim. Doesn't matter if it's a brother from the father or a brother from the mother. How do you know? It says Vidinhu. And I can even go about this logically. I can look at this two ways. Chayiv kan v'chayiv b'chaysei. He's chayiv over here, and he's also chayiv if he lives with his sister. Just like by the sister, it could be paternal or maternal. So too, by his sister-in-law, his brother's wife could be maternal or paternal. That's what we're trying to say. Or maybe go away from this approach and look at this differently. Chayiv kan v'chayiv b'dei dasei. He's chayiv over here, and he's also chayiv, but that's the way we do a comparison. He's also chayiv with his aunt. Just like by the aunt, it had to be that she was married to his paternal uncle. I can't say paternal uncle because that sounds like it's the father's brother, as opposed to the mother's brother. Just like the aunt is married to the father's brother from the father's half brother from the same, sharing the same grandfather, but not the half brother sharing the same grandmother. So too, by maybe the sister-in-law, the brother's wife, maybe it's only the brother sharing the same father, not sharing the same mother. So it says near Lamidaima. Let's see who we should compare this to. We should compare the same level. Just like his sister, it didn't matter, so to his sister-in-law, it shouldn't matter how his brothers related to him. And don't prove from the uncle, the aunt, because that's the father's relatives, not his own relative. Or maybe not. Over there, it's through marriage. Here, it's also through marriage. And don't prove from the sister, because that comes without marriage. Talmud Laimar, Ervas Achicha, if you take a look at the pasuk that we quoted, the pasuk actually originally was Ervas Eishes Achicha Leisagale, and the pasuk concludes Ervas Achicha. Why does it have to repeat that? Yeah, a lot of these these psukim, I think they call it chiastic. You start off, chiastic is this like poetry form where you start off A, B, C, B, A. You repeat. I had one of my Rosh Hashivas used to talk like that. If it is, I don't know if it was translating from Hebrew.
The last
He
word
would
in
always
line
repeat back the beginning.
always
Why does Abaya and Rava say? Why does Abaya and Rava? Or something, like they always come back to the. So, anyway, so the nakedness of the brother's wife should not be uncovered. It's the nakedness of the brother. So there you go. It takes us back. Why does it have to repeat that? It's coming to tell me Bein Minaav, Bein Minaim, that the brother, it doesn't matter which, if it's a maternal brother, paternal brother, both of them are prohibited. So once we have the brother's wife, it goes whether it's maternal or paternal, that his wife is going to be prohibited. Doesn't matter how it's his brother. Now it can take us back to his wife's sister, that it also doesn't matter because that would be both on the same level. It's kreve yatzmai, and it's also through kedushin. Because there's a concept of yibum, so this gets complicated a little bit because what we're dealing here with the brother's wife. Now, a brother's wife, well, it's not always prohibited. There are times that the brother's wife is permissible. The brother passed away without children. So once we have that story involved in this, now we can already start to play with the two psukim. That maybe one of them is teaching me something else in the loss of Yibam, and this is opening up a whole nother chapter here. That could. Maybe both of those verses are dealing with the sister-in-law, which is the brother's wife, from the father, not from the mother. It would mess up everything that we said. So why do we have two psukim? Well, Chada, one of the psukim is Diesh Labanim B'chaye Baila. One of them is that they had children. He's not allowed to marry her. Chada, Dein Labanim B'chaye Baila. One of them is when she didn't have children. What's B'chaye Baila? Means that instead of him dying, she was divorced. Now, there's no yibum if she's divorced. So it's a regular sister-in-law that's prohibited. But what the Gemara is telling me here is that I could have thought that maybe there's a distinction between if he divorced her with having children or he divorced her without having children. And I need two psukim to tell me that both of those times she's prohibited, because when he passed away, there's a difference. So maybe when he divorced her, there's also a difference. I need two psukim to tell that to me, which leaves me without a pasuk to tell me that it's his sister, that his sister-in-law, based on the brother, is depending on if it's from the father or from the mother. So I would only know from the father. The Gemara says right away, "Ein labanim b'chaye baila midir Rav Huna nafka." I had a Gemara yesterday, which Rav Huna quoted a pasuk. Pasuk says, "The ish asher yikach es eshes achiv nidahi." Someone that marries his brother's wife. It's like the first line over there, and the wide lines in yesterday's Daf. Where was Rav Huna? Yeah. So it comes down to this. It says Amakra. It says, yeah. And what does he mean by that? The Gemara comes out that what it means is v'chieshes achiv nidahi elkini demadni afki sheish let lachmikan b'shas isura b'kars afesh. No, I'm sorry. I'm jumping to the next piece. You're right. It's earlier. Rav Huna said, Remez li Yevamos Asura b'chaye baila minayin. It says, since it's only permitted after Misa, that tells me that if he's alive, it's prohibited. So in the end, it says that because of the word nida, that it says that just because later on she's going to become permitted, doesn't mean that now she's permitted also. Okay. What we just did was we had a suggestion that maybe there would be a distinction between if he divorced her with children or without children, and both psukim would be used for that. So we said no, that we know already, because while he's alive, it's prohibited. She's a sister-in-law. Maybe one is telling me that I can't do yibum if there were children. It's such a basic concept. Ervas achiv gila, or ervas achicha he, would be telling me that you can't marry the sister-in-law if the brother passed away with children. I know the pasuk says that if he passed away without children, it's a mitzvah to marry it. But how do you know it's an aveira if he passed away with children? So the Gemara says, Yesh labanam lachem misas baila leitzricha kra. I don't need a pasuk for that, because midam rachman she'ein labanam muteres hayesh labanam asura. Where it says it's, I would understand that, because it says that it's permissible if he passes away without children. What does it mean permissible? It's a mitzvah of yibum. So that would tell me that if he passed away with children, so it would be forbidden for the brother-in-law to marry the brother to marry the sister-in-law. The Gemara says, but you still don't. You don't know that it's prohibited. Why? Because v'dilma ein labana masura la'alma v'sharia liyavam. This is very interesting. Maybe if he passed away without children, the sister-in-law is not allowed to marry anyone except for the brother. However, yesh labanim, if he passed away with children, you see the Torah doesn't tell me clear. Maybe I would say, sharia la'alma v'sharia liyabam. Maybe she's allowed to marry everyone, the brother or the rest of the world. I never thought of that. Right. This is a little out of the box.
Yeah.
Inami, another possibility. Ein labanim mitzvah, yesh labanim rishus. This we had before. We had maybe if he passed away without children, Reuven passed away without children, there's a mitzvah on Shimon to marry Leah. But if he passed away with children, then he's allowed to marry Leah. Comes the pasuk and tells me no, he's not. So I would need a pasuk that's not so obvious. Inami, ein labanim in. If he doesn't have children, then yes, he's supposed to marry her. Yesh labanim, loy, then he's not supposed to. And we actually knew that. So then what's the pasuk? Well, v'lav haba mechlal aseh. I would only know that a lav that comes out of a positive command, the negative command that comes out of a positive, what does it mean? Torah tells me that he's supposed to marry her if he doesn't have, if he passed away without children. What would that tell me? That if he passed away with children, then I shouldn't marry her. So I would know that already.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that would not be a negative prohibition, that would be a positive prohibition. Why? Because I'm getting the negative from the positive. The positive is, this is what you should do. Mashma implies that I shouldn't. When I have this implication that comes out of a positive, I consider it a positive. So I need the pasuk of ervas eishes achicha leisegale ervas achicha to teach me that it's a negative prohibition also. If he passed away with children.
Is this the same as love?
No. This is called the lav haba mechlal aseh. Lav haba mechlal aseh. A lav that comes from what's implied from a positive. Mechlal, what's implied from a positive. So therefore, kasav karachrina ervas achiv gila. What the Gemara just did now, it introduced a third pasuk. Yeah, I don't know the Chumash well enough to know why it's repeated different times, what each one is talking about. You know, we have the prohibited unions listed in the Torah in Achrimais, which is this week's parsha. I think we have it again last week's parsha. Then we have it again this week, I think, in Kedoshim, right? We have it again. What's the repetition? Why is it repeated? I think one of them gives me the prohibitions. One of them gives me the punishments. I'm not sure exactly to go through it because it seems to be repetitive. But in that repetition, I have another pasuk. I have ervas achiv gila, which is a third pasuk. So that tells me, the third pasuk tells me that it's not only the sister-in-law that's because it's the half-brother of the father, it's also the sister-in-law that's the half-brother from the mother, is also prohibited to marry his wife. Yeah. Whatever you want, right? I'll let it pass. The ema eishes ach min ha'em ke'eishes ach min ha'av. The Gemara has an interesting question that should have come up probably on Daf Beis of Yevamos, not on Daf Nun Hey. It says maybe if there's a prohibition on the sister-in-law to marry the sister-in-law, and there's no difference between if it's the half-brother from the father or the half-brother from the mother's wife, right? The brother's wife. So then maybe the mitzvah of Yibam applies to both half-brother from the father and half-brother from the mother. It's a very important question, fundamental question. Maybe there should be a mitzvah of Yibam over there. It says, Amar Kra, he, Babiyasate. It says, Ervas Achicha he. And Ervas Achicha he tells me that she is always prohibited. Now, I didn't realize learning this, which pasuk was associated with which one. But now I guess we're getting that the Ervas Achicha he is the one that's teaching me the half brother from the mother's side. I just knew I had 3 psukim. And 3 psukim, I'll use them for 3 halachas. But now it's apparent that this one is teaching me, Ervas Achicha he is teaching me the half brothers from the maternal half mother is the one that's not going to allow, not going to allow a yibam. And that's based on the pasuk he, that it remains prohibited even after he passes away without children. Okay. Achaisai the kasav bakaris lamali. It's very interesting. When you read the psukim, last week's parsha, this week's parsha, things start to pop out now like a little bit different. The ariri and the litzrar and the nida and the things, all of these words that are like, it didn't need to say that. And isha. Okay. So why does it need to say karis? Now, if you remember yesterday, we learned Amar Rabbi Yaina v'Teimer Rav Huna Breder Rav Yishom Kol Asher Yasem Mikol HaToiv V'Seila V'Nichrason Afarsai V'Yises Huksha Kol HaRayis Kol Nanida Manida Baraf. Okay, there was this comparison that all the arayas are in the same boat. They have the same halach. That means that they would all get karis, unless it says clearly Yamusu or whatever. So why does it have to say by the sister? It says V'Nichrasu. Why does it have to say that? I already have it from the general rule that all of them have karis. Look at the Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara answers. Rabbi Yochanan says, we call this lechalik. I could have thought that maybe a person has, in order to get the prohibition of karis, he has to actually have relations with every single possible prohibited woman to get. I wouldn't say that each individual one would already incur the punishment. We call this lachalik. It divides it up into separate prohibitions. Because it says, anyone that does from all of the abominations.
But
He didn't do all of them.
I guess my question earlier
Instead of
was,
any of them,
would
right?
it still be considered a marriage and receive
No.
punishment of karis?
No, it would not
No,
be a
it wouldn't
marriage.
be a
It would
marriage.
just be a union that incurs karis. Yeah.
Then they would say, Huh?
Huh?
They would say, Bakul.
Call.
Well, that's what I'm
We say
thinking
that.
of.
Is that really how it would work? says Mikol. Mikol could mean from any or from all. Oh, you're saying it wouldn't be from all. Yeah. So I need this one individual halacha of kares by the sister to tell me that I have to divide up every single one of them. How does that do that? So there's a rule that davar shahaya b'chlal v'yatsa min haklal alamed le'lamed alatzma yatsa alamed haklal kul yatsa. If I have a general rule and I have one item that steps out for whatever reason, which number is that? Called davar shahaya b'chlal. Number 8 from the 13. So what steps out over here is the sister, that she gets an individual kares. That teaches me not just that the sister gets an individual kares, but it teaches me that every single one of the arayas gets a kares, any relation, any union that was prohibited. Rabbi Yitzchak has a detailed halacha. Why does it say kares by the sister? It's coming to tell me that if the fellow was warned that if he has relations with his sister, he's going to get malchus, he doesn't get malchus. He only gets kares. If the witness that warned him mistakenly said, "Don't do that," you're supposed to warn together with the punishment, so the person realizes that. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's actually not so clear because there are opinions that hold that if he was warned for malchus, he actually gets malchus. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, when he gets the malchus, the kares goes away. Right, that was a discussion. Remember where we had that? Malchus is easier. Right. Right. Right.
All this, no? I don't know.
So, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, that uses this pasuk for this detail, about malchus versus kares. So, l'chalik minalan. How does he know that a person incurs the punishment by just prohibiting one of the forbidden unions and not by all of them? So, nafkale el isha benidas tamasa. There's a pasuk that says that a woman, when she's tameh, he should not come close. L'chayev al kol isha v'isha. Didn't need to say ve'el isha. Could have said ve'el nida. Right? Didn't need, that's an extra word.
Yeah.
So that extra word teaches me that every single woman that of any forbidden union, he would be chayev on each and every one, according to Rabbi Yitzchak. Okay. They does say the kasavar rachmana aririm yiyu. If he has relations with his aunt, so it says that he gets kares. Now, the term for kares over there is aririm. Aririm means that he passes away, that his children pass away, or he passes away without children, or the children. Yeah, aririm is it's a synonym for kares. So, Lamali, why does he need to say that? We have already kares by the general prohibition. It says, look at the Rabbah, like Rabbah says. The Rabbah Rami. Rabbah put in front of us a contradiction. He says, Ksiv aririm yiyu. Aririm yiyu means that in the end, he'll be ariri. That means that if he had children, they'll pass away. Uksiv aririm yamusu. It also says that he'll die without children. That means he won't have any children at all. Haketzad. How does that work? So he explained, Yesh leibanim, if he had children, kaivran. Ein leibanim, he didn't have children, then he won't have children. We need both of them. Because Rahman Arim Yiyu, if it would say Arim Yiyu, Havamina Ad Chatoi, I could have thought that only the children that he had before the sin would pass away. The children that he has after the sin would be fine. Aval Mechatoi Ve'elach Loi. That's interesting. Svara. Children before he was still a tzaddik. Children after would be problematic. It's like seems a little opposite to what it's counterintuitive. Because of Rahman Aririm Yamusu, that's why he needs to Aririm Yamusu, that the ones afterwards also pass away. Because of Rahman Aririm Yamusu, if it would mean say Aririm Yamusu, have mina mechata ve'elach, have mikaralai. Only the ones after, but not the ones before. So before the sin. So it says both. Okay.
What sin exactly is this in this case?
Any of the prohibited, yeah, but this is specifically referring to the aunt, the uncle's wife, the uncle's wife. Ha'ara de chayvi lavim minalan. Okay, did we say ha'ara of chayvi krisis? Yeah, I think we did yesterday. We discussed ha'ara. Ha'ara means that it's just the initial stage of the relations. It's not that he completed the relations. We quoted this. So now we're taking it to the next prohibition. We're talking about chayvei lav, and where do you see that for if it's a prohibited union, but it's based on a negative prohibition? Where do you see that that union is already, the act is already committed just by the initial stage of the relations? You see, the giving of seed would be the end of the relations. Ha'ara is the beginning of the relation. So by a shifcha charufa. Shifcha charufa is a maidservant that somehow is married to a man. Now, there's a prohibition, a person's not allowed to marry a non-Jewish maid. So, and there's no marriage there anyway. So somehow this woman is married. How does she marry? There's two possibilities in the Gemara. One is that married to the Eved Ivri, and someone has relations with her. That means it's almost adultery with a woman, with a man's wife. Almost like adultery, but it's a maidservant. So there's a special korban that he brings, Asham Shifcha Charufa. The other possibility is that there were two masters. One of them, Frida, okay, whatever the case is. Shifcha Charufa, over there it says, the pasuk says, Shichva Zera. What's the pasuk exactly? A man that, yeah, so it says over there, Shichva Zera. Michlal, that implies the Chayvei Lavin Ba'ara, that all other Chayvei Lavin are not with Shichva Zera, are not with this emission of seed. It's only this one. Okay. It doesn't always work like that. I'm sorry? Right. Well, the Gemara asks right away, Adrabba. Since by Chayvei Krisis we already learned yesterday's Gemara that it's Ha'ara Michlal, the Chayvei Lavin B'Gemar Bia. That Chayvei Lavin are only at the Gemar Bia, only when there's the Zera, only when there's a mission of seed. Oh, and then what would I do with the pasuk? So 1 second. Ravashi says, but if that's the case, then you didn't need to say anything by Shifcha Charufa. Okay. The fact that it says something by Shifcha Charufa means that that's the only one that has that halacha, but all the other ones is from just the initial act. How do we know that a Kohen that's not allowed to marry a widow or a Kohen Gadol, or a Kohen that's not allowed to marry a divorcee, how do we know that? I always thought that was a marriage, but it's not true. You see? Yeah. I remember someone asked me once, he wanted to marry, it was a Kohen, he wanted to marry a woman that he was forbidden to him. I said, it's a problem. You can't marry her. So he said, okay, I'm just going to live with her without marriage. It was, quasi-religious. It was, I forget, I think she was just she had lived with a non-Jew before or something. So she would be prohibited to him because of a Zaina. But okay, so they're just gonna de facto, they would just won't do a kedushin. So remember asking, and the rabbi said, no. It's not the marriage that's prohibited, it's the living together that's prohibited. It's not, he was thinking the whole issue is like giving her a ring. No, it's the living together that's prohibited. So okay, here, what happens here if the Kohen lives with a woman that he's not allowed to live with, which is exactly the answer that I was getting. So now, well, I already know from Shifcha Charufa, I already know that it's even ha'ara, even just the initial stage of that act is already prohibited. So the problem is that from Shifcha Charufa, I can't learn because that only tells me all chayvei lavin that are for everyone, prohibited on everyone. This is a specific for a kayan. I can't learn from that. Maybe over here it's different. So I need a special source. So asya kicha kicha. We learn from Karis, it says Isa sheyikach achaisai. Person that will marry a sister, that's Issa Karis. And it also says by Kahuna that La Yikachu, Isha Zaina whatever, La Yikachu. So Kicha Kicha. The Chayve Asay Minalan. What about the positive prohibitions, which means what's a positive prohibition? That the third generation of an Egyptian convert, that's the one that can come. It's mashma that the first two, that's a Asay, that comes from a positive. It's only the third one, yes. Okay. So Asya Bia, we learn. It says Darsh Li Shiyavai, and it also says La Yavai Mamzer. So Mamzer was the Chai Lavin. So we can learn from there as well. It's the Gzeir Shava, right? The verbal analogy. We take those words, it teaches me the halacha. Yevama L'Shuk Minalan. How do we know that if someone wants to live with the Yevama instead of the Yavam, right? Some other fellow that lives with her, she's a widow. And how do we know that it's just Ha'ara? Just the initial stage of the relations, already the prohibition. So ilaman damar lav. It depends how you want to look at this. If you say that it's a lav, it says loisia eishes ishzar. She should not marry someone else. That's a lav. So then it's one of the lavin. So we know already the lavin, the negative prohibitions that it's hara. Ilaman damar say. If you want to say it's asay, it says yavama yavayala, but not someone else. Then it's asay. We all know the asay is also. It says bia. We know that. Okay. How do we know that the kinyan? Yeah, we were thinking we're only dealing with prohibitions. How do we know that the mitzvah is already fulfilled and the kinyan is already acquired on the yavama just from the hara? So it says asya bia. We learn bia. That's the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Isha labayla minalan. How do we know a regular marriage that the ha'ara is already the kinyan? Asya kicha kicha. We learn kicha kicha. Amarava. Lamali dekas rachman shich vazer b'shivcha charufa, shich vazer b'eshasis, and shich vazer b'saita. 3 times in the Torah it says shich vazer. Now by the shivcha charufa we learned that that's because the prohibition would be only committed at Gamar Bia. What about Eishasish and Saita? It says like this. Shivcha Charufa Kedamran. Shivcha Charufa we already answered. Eishasish Pratla Mishamish Mes. This is someone that has relations, but his organ wasn't aroused. So it's called Aver Mes, with a dead organ. So how do we know that's it turns out that that's excluded. That's not considered a prohibition. It's not considered, well, it doesn't incur the punishment. That only fits according to one opinion. That says that if someone has relations with a dead organ, that is for any of the forbidden unions, he's exempt. So what do you do with the pasuk of Shich Vasera? This is a totally different story. This is not associated with what we just said. Mesa, Mesa means if she passed away and he lives and someone commits adultery with the wife of she was married a few minutes ago. Now she passed away. So how do we know? Oh, this excludes, she's not married anymore. She's Mesa. She passed away. Could have thought after she passed away, she's still considered his relative, which is relevant for Makayan becoming Tameh and all of that. It's relative. Maybe it's a married woman, the person that just had committed this act. Kamash Malan, that no. Okay. The Saita Lamali. What about by a Saita? Look at the Tanya. We're going to be able to stop. Okay. It says Shechva Zera Pratel Davaracha. Bryce says Shechva Zera. This is coming to exclude something else. It says my Davaracha. What is that other thing that you're not telling me? Rav Sheshes Pratel Shekinala L'Shleikedarka. Sheshes says that if he warned her, don't be secluded with that fellow, in order to have relations Shleikedarka in an abnormal manner, because that's what he was suspecting her with. So that would be not a saita. Amalei Rava says Mishkavei Yishiksiv. Why is that not a saita? It says Mishkavei Yisha, the plural. That means there's two ways of living with a woman, and it's the same prohibition. That's what we learned before. Elamarava Prat Lishkina Derech Ivarim. It's coming to exclude Derech Ivarim. Derech Ivarim means that he was just going to press himself against her, but not to actually go inside her in any form. Amalei Abaya. Abaya says Pritzusa Asarachmana. You're trying to tell me that because she's just the prutza, she's just misbehaving, and she's already going to be prohibited to her husband. She didn't even commit the act. He warned her with nashika. Nashika over here doesn't mean actually kissing. It means that the private organs are touching. That's the nashika, the kissing of the organs. If you want to say that, what is ha'ara? Now we're getting into the details over here. If you say that ha'ara is the entrance of the top of the organ, the corona, so then, okay, then nashika would be different. That's just the touching. But if ha'ara is the touching, so then why does it have to say shechva zera? Really, he's warning her derech ivarim. Abaya's question, so why does she become a saita? She shouldn't become prohibited to her husband. And I still need a pasuk to teach this to me. I could have thought that she becomes prohibited to her husband based on whatever the husband's kapeda is, whatever he's specific about. So you see that he warned her about this. She should become prohibited. Kamash Malan, that she doesn't become prohibited to her husband. Okay, let's leave it there. Okay. Oh boy.
And now we go daven.
Yeah.